Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining us. I quickly wanted to introduce myself and welcome everybody here. So I'm Megan and I'm the manager of Two Bright Lights. So I'll be manning the questions throughout the whole thing. So if you have any, send them over chat and I'll be happy to answer them. And this is Tessa, our social media and community coordinator. So she'll be running the show today. And I just wanted to say welcome. Thanks so much for joining us and kicking off your journey to getting published. We're so excited to have you here.
All right. Well, hi guys. Thanks so much for joining us today. So I just want to go over the basics of Two Bright Lights with all of you to get you a good foundation of the platform and how you can start submitting and getting your work published. So I'm going to turn it over to my screen now so you can see what I'm going to be doing. So let's go here. Okay. Okay, so as you can see, this is the home screen and where you will be logging in to access your account. I'm going to be signing into our kind of our dummy account so I can show all of you guys the great tools that we have to help you get published and just the regular process of Two Bright Lights. So here we are. So this is the home screen for when you log in to your account. Just a quick little orientation on where you are and things to click. So this is the live feed, and these are all of the current albums that are being published out there with our publication. So it gives you it in live time, in real time, I mean. So you can see 1 hour ago that this was published in Couture, Colorado Weddings, things like that. So it's just kind of a neat little tool to see what's getting published out there. So the first thing that you should click on would be your Albums tab. So this is kind of your hub for all of your albums and maintaining them and then getting them ready to submit. So these are all thumbnails of the albums that are in our account. So you can see that we have a couple of test albums here and things that have images, and these are what we would then go on to submit in the next step. So I'm going to go over how to create an actual album and how to build it and all the things that you want to include for your submissions. So start by hitting the Create Album button. So first you're going to want to categorize the album. So what types of images are you going to be uploading? Are they from a wedding? Was it maybe a newborn shoot that would qualify as a family category? Was it a birthday party, a fashion shoot? Some of those types of images need to go in the correct categories. So for today, we're just going to hit weddings. And then you can further categorize by wedding day, or if it was the trash the dress session, things like that. So just hit wedding day. And then here you'll say if it's real or styled. So real is obviously if it was an event that took place, somebody's actual wedding. And then styled is a styled shoot. So we'll hit real for today. And here's where you're going to enter in all of the information about that wedding or event. So here's the contact information. So that's for the client. So it would be the first name of the couple that got married. So I'm just going to put in test names for today. Okay, and then obviously event date. And then we'll put city. Okay, so here's descriptive title. So this is actually a really important piece of information to include because it's really a snapshot of what the editor will be looking at for your album. So you don't want to be too long and too descriptive, but you also don't want to be too short. So there's kind of a fine line here. So try to throw in a couple of adjectives that will describe the event. So instead of saying it was a summer wedding, if you know it was on Cape Cod and it was rustic, try to throw those into the title as well. So I would say it would be something like rustic, outdoor, wedding on Cape Cod. So that just gives a little bit of a snapshot of what the editor should expect to look at. And then here's your album story. So this is definitely one of the most important pieces of your album and then your submission later on. The album story is the part of the album where you give as many details as you can pertaining to the event and the images that are actually in the album. So this would be where you describe things like how the couple met, how they chose the venue for their wedding, how maybe a friend came in from Italy overseas and flew in and it was a surprise for the bride, you know, kind of those really fun details that set your images apart from other people's images and albums, and really just drives home to the editor why they should pick your album. You know, great photos are one thing, but a story that accompanies those awesome photos just makes your submission a total knockout. So trying to include as many things as you can in this album story is a really important thing for your submission. Okay, so then hit next. Next, you're going to be tagging where the album actually took place, which is the venue, and then you're going to be tagging all of the corresponding vendors that worked on that event with you. So for the venue, you can search in the search bar if you know where the wedding took place. So I'm going to just do an example one. Okay. And then just hit the magnifying glass to search. And all of the possible matches should pull below. So in this case, I see the correct one, and I'm going to hit the checkbox, and it will automatically put that venue up top here. If the wedding took place at somebody's house, just hit private residence, and that will work and tag it accordingly. One tip I will give is that sometimes our search bar can be a little glitchy and picky about what types of things you search for. So if you're searching for a venue, and the same goes for vendors as well. If you're searching for something and you type in the full name and it doesn't pull below, try searching just a part of the name and see if it pulls below. A lot of times it will. So in this case, if Metropolitan Building wasn't pulling, I would try searching by Metropolitan to see if it would pull below. So here we have our venue tagged. Next, we're going to tag some of our vendors. So what I will say about tagging vendors is that this is also an extremely important part of your album creation process. Just like the album story was very important to include and give all those details, here's where you're kind of giving credit to those vendors that also worked really hard on this event. So you want to tag as many things as you can, anything from the baker to the florist to the dress designer. All of those important details, the more you can tag, the better. You can never have too many vendors, and oftentimes our editors say that they like to see at least 5 to 7 vendors tagged per album. We know that sometimes that there are events that are, say, DIY, and the bride or groom did a lot of that work themselves. They made the invitations, their grandmother cooked the cake, things like that. Don't fret with those. You can include that info in the album story. So you may not have a lot of vendors, and if you're worried about an editor maybe passing over your submission because you only have a couple of things tagged, be sure to include that in the album story and say, hey, we know that there aren't a lot of vendors on this wedding, but it's a really cool reason. It's because the bride DIY'd things, her family members pitched in and made things themselves. Just include all of that information, and editors will be more than happy to review your submission and just be excited about what you have tagged here. So I'm going to do a test one so you can also see the process. Okay, we'll search. Okay, click this one. We'll hit add selected vendors. And as you can see, it went up top here. So if you ever want to edit a vendor and say like it didn't have the correct email address or you want to give more info, you can just hit that pencil button and then change the info accordingly. And say you're searching for a vendor and you can't find it below. You can create a new vendor tag by hitting create a new vendor. And you can enter in all the information for that vendor so they can be listed in your album. So just be sure to include what type of vendor they are and their business name, and then as many other elements that you can, hit create and you'll be good to go there. So we also have 2 other tools on this page. You can import from ShootQ if you're somebody who already uses ShootQ and wants to pull data from that platform. And then we also have the Ask Client for Help button. So say that you can't remember all of the vendors and you want to reach out to somebody like the wedding planner that worked on this event. You can hit the Ask for Client button and fill in all of their info, and a nice email will be sent to them. You can also edit it accordingly if you wanted to customize it. It will send directly to their email, and they'll be prompted to help you fill out this album and include the vendor information if you need their help. Okay, So once you have your venue and all of your vendors tagged, you'll hit the next button. And here's just a couple other ways to categorize your album. So we have color themes. So click as many colors as that you think were the prominent colors in that event. And then choose as many descriptive tags as you feel really represent the album well. So if you knew it was a rustic wedding, see, I'm not sure if we have a rustic one. You can hit barn. Rustic's here. So it was in the summer, so I would hit summer. Okay, we'll hit Caucasian. If I knew it was, say, a Jewish wedding, and it didn't happen on a holiday, so I'm not going to hit holiday. So then hit next. And you'll be brought to your album shell. So this is the kind of the shell and the basis of your album without any images added to it. I just want to point out a couple of things when you actually are in the album shell. You can edit your album and the album information at any time. You would just go to this bar here and click on the areas that you want to update or change. So say you forgot the florist when you were actually creating the album. You went back, you maybe called the wedding planner and you got that information and you wanted to come back and add that information to the vendor section. So what I would recommend doing is going here and hitting edit and then going to the vendor section. You can then search for the vendor here and see if they're in our database already. And if they're not, then just search, hit create new vendor listing, and you can tag them accordingly. So you can change information at any time, and we even recommend doing it as soon as you remember the information, even after you submit it to publications, you can add info as well. So that's kind of just a nice fallback in case you forget any important details. So now I'm going to just show you how to upload those images. You know, you did kind of the hard part, now it's the fun part to add the beautiful images. So hit the Add Images button to start with that process. We are integrated with 4 other platforms. So we have Dropbox, SmugMugs, and Folio, and ShootProof. So if you use any of those platforms to organize your images, we can connect to them and upload straight from that platform. So if you were to do from Dropbox, just hit the icon here. You'll be prompted to log into your account, and your images will be brought over accordingly. You can also hit the My PC button to upload straight from your computer. Choose Files button here and follow those steps. Okay, there's one other thing that I want to show you here, so I'm going to go back into it. One thing that we always recommend is that you follow the image requirements when uploading images to your album. We require images to be at least 2,000 pixels wide, no watermark, JPEG format, and we recommend that you upload up to 150 images. As a paid member on 2 Bright Lights, you have the ability to have that many images to your album, and it's always great to use that maximum number since editors love to have options with their photos. So a couple of tips here. You know, you want to include as many detailed shots as you can from an event. The more pictures that you can that will inspire future brides to be and couples planning their big day is really important. So if you think about who the different publications are trying to write and cater to, it's really those couples planning their big day. So if you can highlight different elements like the cake or the bouquet or the bride's dress and the details on those dress, that's really going to make your album stand out to those editors because it's going to be material that they're going to want to share with their subscribers and their audiences. So while 150 images may seem like a lot, if you kind of combine those detailed shots with those important images of the bride walking down the aisle, you know, all those special moments, 150 can actually fill up pretty quickly. So it's really great to use as many images as you can. Okay, so that's kind of the album creation in a nutshell. I wanted to pause for a minute to see if there were any questions that I can answer before I go on to the submission process.
Yeah, and I know there's a little bit of a delay with the system, so feel free to throw in your questions and we'll get to them. But in the meantime, I know that you mentioned, obviously, it's so important to tag all the vendors. And one thing that we hear from photographers, but other vendors as well, is how do we make sure that we have all of this vendor information when it's so important? I mean, what do we hear from successful photographers or successful submitters and how they get that?
Sure. So we have many different photographers that work with their wedding planner and with the couple as well to try to keep track of that information when they shoot the wedding. So not only does the photographer, show up to the wedding shoot and kind of call it a day, they try to keep it all of their information from that event in one place and make a list so that when they go back to create that album and keep submissions in their, the forefront of their mind while they're actually at the event, they can access that info easily and have that available to tag in their album.
Yeah, and Joe had a great idea. I mean, so using Aisle Planner and then keeping all the vendor information in one place, which is great, and then providing the photographer with a list of vendors and their contact information and social accounts a week before the wedding. That is fantastic. I know most photographers would love to have something like that. So asking the couples, asking the planner, just getting as much of that information as possible is really helpful.
Definitely.
And then Joe had another question, just talking about describing the process for those who are not photographers. So obviously they need to request permission first. So how does that work? And how does that work for the photographer?
Sure. Great question. So when a vendor, wants to actually create an album and submit on a photographer's behalf, their setup's going to look just a little bit different than the account that we're in currently. So they would go to their albums page and they would see a button that says create album. And when they click on that plus sign, they'll have an option and to see all of the photographers that have currently given them permission to upload and submit on their behalf. And then they'll also see a button to request permission. So if you work with a photographer and you wanted to submit and they haven't given you the permission through the system yet, you can search for them and then send off that request and it will go directly to that photographer for them to accept. And so on the photographer's side of granting permission, their process is actually fairly quick and easy. So what they would do is if they didn't already have an account with Two Bright Lights, they can create a free account using the email address that was used to send that permissions request through Two Bright Lights. They would make their free account with Two Bright Lights, log in, and then they would go to their avatar, and I believe they would hit the My Account button, and then they'll see up here on the tabs, they'll see permissions, and they'll see a list of permission requests that they need to act upon. And they can hit the checkbox to hit yes and allow that to happen, or the X if they didn't want to grant permission. So as soon as they hit that checkbox, they are done with their process, and then the vendors, the wedding planner that sent the permissions request, is free to create that album and submit on their behalf. So it's a pretty easy and painless step for everybody involved. And then we always recommend too that if you have a photographer that you're working with that maybe is tech savvy and they're just a little intimidated by the system, we are always here to help them and happy to walk them through creating an account with us. So just email support@2brightlights and one of us will assist with that as well.
Yeah. But that was a great question because a lot of people have to do that process. So we got one more question from Kamari. I hope that I'm pronouncing that correctly. But so a question regarding videographers using Two Bright Lights.
Sure.
How does it work for submissions? And if they're not submitting with a photographer, how does that work?
Sure. So videography is great to include in a submission with other images. So what we recommend for a videographer that is working to submit with a photographer, that they try to include the link in that album overall. So a lot of our publications don't necessarily take videography on its own. They like to be able to write an album, write a feature, include images from an album, and then have a complimentary video at the end to just further illustrate that day of event. So I would recommend trying to team up with your photographer and include it in that submission. And if you maybe didn't work directly with a photographer, team up with the wedding planner or the other vendor that may have been at the styled shoot that you were the videographer for, that event, just to try to get it into that album and that submission and get your work out there with accompanying images.
Yeah, I think there are certain publications, like for example, Beyond the Wanderlust comes to mind, that they do accept just videos, but as Tessa said, many of these, especially when they're doing real wedding inspiration stories, they want a video to go along with images of that day.
Definitely.
Awesome. So I think that's all the questions we have right now, so
Okay.
we can move on, but feel
Great.
free to keep sending them in as we go.
Sure, definitely. All right, so now that you've created an album, here's the fun part. You get to start your submission. So hit the Submissions tab to get started. So first you're gonna wanna hit the Create Submissions button. Here's where you're gonna choose what album you're looking to submit. So I'm going to choose this one for today. And this should look pretty familiar. This is the section that you filled out when you were originally creating the album. And here's another chance to just include as many details as possible. So if you forgot an important fact, you can throw it in the album story and it will be included in this submission. So just do a little double check to make sure all the information is correct here. And then be sure to click the Terms of Service and then hit Next. And you're going to be brought to the submissions page. So here is a list of all of our publications, and you can filter down accordingly and choose who you want to submit to directly. So at the top, you're going to want to start with your filters by filtering by exclusive or non-exclusive publication. So I just want to go over what those categories mean. So exclusive publication is a publication that wants content that hasn't been featured anywhere else. So if you have a wedding that maybe got popular on social media and on your blog, and maybe you submitted it to another blog outside of Two Bright Lights, that's going to be something that you can't submit to an exclusive publication because it's already been featured elsewhere. But if you have a wedding like that that was featured in other places, you can submit it to a non-exclusive publications since they don't mind if your materials have been featured elsewhere. So if you really wanted to submit to an exclusive, you could hit that checkbox and it will filter down here. Or if you had an album that you knew had to be submitted to non-exclusives, you can hit the checkbox to filter for non-exclusive. You can filter further by media type. So if you know it's a print magazine, you can hit print. Or if you know that it's a web blog, you can hit web. Okay. So right here is all of the publications that are according to these filters above. What you want to do is click the publications that you're looking to submit to, and they'll show up in your selected publications box. So I'm going to pick a couple. So do Fabulously Design, ISO Alt. Okay. Modern Weddings, and then we'll do One Wed. And then you're going to hit Next. And this is the last step. So here's where you're going to add that personalized note to your submission. And so we know that it's a little time consuming, the whole process of creating the album and then submitting it. And at this point, you really just want to hit the submit button and send it out and get your results. But we do really encourage you to take the time to write a small note to your editor. It's really your last chance to appeal to them, to tell them why they should feature your album, why it's a good fit for their publication. Really any of those is a great place to put it. So to personalize each note, just click on the publication here and you'll be brought to that little messaging center, and you can type it in and then hit save and it will save for that publication. So once you do that, you can then go ahead and hit the submit button and the album will go directly to those publications. One thing I do want to note is we do have the Save as a Draft button. So say that you want to queue up the submission, get it all ready to go, but you know that there's one little detail that you need to get to that from that wedding planner and tag that vendor, and you just want to save it. Hit Save as a Draft, and at any time you can go back and see that draft here. So you would just go to your submissions page, hit the pencil button, and there it is. Here's your draft. And then you can go ahead and finish it and then hit submit and you're good to go. So that's really how to directly submit an album to a publication. I do want to just show you a couple things on the submissions page that will make your life a little easier and more organized. So your submissions page is a great place to keep track of the status of all of your submissions and remember where you submitted them to and all of that important information. So each thumbnail is a representation of the actual submission to a publication. You'll be able to see their status in the top left-hand corner by the little icons. So the paper airplane means that it's currently under review. So just to tell you guys what those statuses mean as well, under review means that a publication has received your submission and they're clicking through it and deciding on whether they want to accept it or not. The paper airplane that is yellow is the submitted status. So it means that a publication has accepted it, well, not accepted it, has seen it, but they haven't started clicking through it yet and deciding on whether or not they want to accept or publish it. The X mark means not a fit, so it means that the publication looked at your album and decided that it wasn't a fit for their publication. And then this little radio dial here means that the album has been accepted and it's been published. And then the check mark means that it's been accepted and it's awaiting its publishing date. So that's kind of just a review of where you can see the statuses from this main page here with the thumbnails. You can also go into a, let's go into one. A submission to see the entire history. So click on the thumbnail and then go to the top right corner and hit history. Here you're going to see a list of all the places that this album has been submitted to. So right now it's only been submitted to the Two Bright Lights blog, but say you submitted to 5 other publications, all of those publications would be listed here and it would list the status. So as you can see, it will tell you that it was submitted on November 5th, 2015, and then it was accepted that same day. So it gives you a running tally of where you submitted it to and then when the status changed. And one cool thing for this little feature is that if your album was accepted and then published, you can click on here to access the URL if the publication included it to go straight to that feature on that blog or publication. The publication could also give you feedback. So say that you submitted an album to thenut.com and they liked it, but it didn't necessarily have as many detailed shots as they prefer for their submissions. They'll give you that feedback right here and you can click on it and see why you got marked as not a fit. And it's a good way to improve your submissions and kind of keep important details in mind for the next time you want to submit to that publication. Okay.
So should we pause for a second, see if
Yeah.
there's any questions about submissions? One question that I know we get a decent amount is there a typical wait time that people have to wait before an editor responds? And what should they do if they feel like it's been a while and they haven't heard anything?
Sure, absolutely. So really editor response time depends on the publication. So we have some publications that are online blogs and they publish multiple times a day and they'll respond pretty quickly to an album submission. But there are different publications that maybe are print and only print twice a year. So they could take up to 6 months to review a submission because they need to see all the submissions that come in and decide upon which ones they want to accept and which ones they don't. So it's a little bit more of a strenuous process on their end and will take a little bit more time. But one tool that I will point out in a couple of minutes is our community tab, and you'll be able to filter down which publications take print or online and what their response times are. So if you're somebody that's looking to get published and you have a fairly short timeline, you can submit to those publications that list shorter timelines in their profile page, and that way kind of your expectations match up with the publications and everybody's happy and their timelines are kept on track.
Cool. And is it okay for me as a submitter to reach out to the editor if I haven't heard anything?
Yeah, definitely. So say you submitted something and it said that they were going to review it within 4 months or a month, whatever they list on their profile page, and you haven't heard back. It's always a great thing to shoot them a quick email to say, hey, I was really excited about this submission to your blog. I think it'd be a great fit. Do you have any update on whether or not you're thinking about featuring it? Any information you can provide would be great. Something of that nature is just a great way to kind of give them a gentle push, but then not being too pushy about your submission.
Yeah, and it also gives you another chance to have another connection with them.
Exactly.
And then also, of course, now I forgot what I was going to ask you. So, well, we got a question.
There you go.
So, I think it's Callie was asking, how can you tell if an editor or publisher has seen your submission again? There was just an issue with the computer screen then.
Oh, sure, definitely. So you can see it in 2 different places. So the first is by clicking on that submissions tab and then hovering over the thumbnail, and you can see if it's under review or if it's accepted, any of those statuses. You can also click into that actual submission, and then you can see it here under review, and then you can also hit the history button to see all of the listings of statuses for that submission.
Cool. And now I remembered my question.
Okay.
So what happens if you have a submission that's been accepted, the publication date was set, and now the publication date has passed, and as far as you can tell, it wasn't published yet? What should you do in that scenario?
Definitely. So you can reach out to the editor, as we mentioned before, just letting them know, hey, it was supposed to be published on this date. We're really excited. Do you have any update? I mean, one thing I will note on that is sometimes editors do fall behind. It's pretty normal. They are human. They go on vacation. They get sick, things like that. So shooting an email is just a great way to make contact with them and see what's going on for the status. The other thing is that we can always release that album back to you. Megan and I manage our support. So if you email support at Two Bright Lights and say this, this album was supposed to be featured a few months ago and I haven't heard anything back and I'd really like to get it published someplace else, we can always go ahead and release it for you so that it's not kind of held in limbo and you can still get it published someplace else.
Okay. I have one more question for you about this.
Okay.
So what happens if my submission's accepted, it has been published, but for some reason it hasn't been marked as published in Two Bright Lights?
Sure. So you can go back in and actually mark it as published. So I believe you can do it. I'll probably do the one that has been accepted but not marked as published yet. So let's go into full view. Okay. And right up here, you can actually hit the publish button. So if you know that it was on like theknot.com, you can take that link from your other tab, paste it in here, list the date that it was published on, hit publish, and now your album will be changed to a published status.
Perfect. And I know just a really quick hint of what's coming up towards the beginning of next year. Every year around the January, February timeframe, we have what is called the Editor's Choice Awards. So those go to the top most published submitters all on Two Bright Lights. So it can be any photographer, it can be a vendor. And so making sure that anything that has been published that may not have been marked as published, going in there and doing that will get your numbers in so that you have a chance of winning. It's really exciting. If you want to check out some of our winners last year, go to our homepage and there's an awards button and you can see our top 10 submitters on there, and some of them have been published over 100 times in 1 year. So it's pretty cool and really exciting to be on that list.
Yeah, definitely. And it's always important to mark your stuff as published. You want that credit. So
absolutely.
Great. Well, if we don't have any other questions,
I think we're good.
Okay, awesome. So I want to show you just a couple more tools before we wrap up. These are going to be tools that will help you target your submissions to boost your submission success. So we're going to start at the request tab here. So just click on that tab. And this is the request page. So this is a live tally of all of the submissions that editors are looking for at this time. So we do send out an email every month with overarching requests from publications. So those might be some of the bigger themes that publications are looking for at all times of the year. But this request tab is kind of a nice tool to complement those monthly emails and show some of the more specific requests that editors may be having. So for example, it's October. A lot of publications are looking for fall type of events right now, or Halloween themed even more specifically. So this is a great place for those editors to list what they're looking for at different times during the year. And it's great for you to kind of go through and scroll through and see what people are looking for, and then also keep in mind the types of albums that you have available. So if you do see something like, hey, I did shoot a wedding that was Halloween themed, this would be perfect for this publication. You can go ahead and then submit to that request. And it's always nice to include that in your message to the publication and the album story and say, I saw in the request tab that you're looking for Halloween weddings. That's why I'm submitting this to you, and I really hope that you like it and it's a great fit for your site. So this is just a really nice page to keep up with what publications are looking for. You can also see some of our new publications that we just added. So Bustled is one of them, Cake and Lace. it's just a really great way to know who to submit to. You can also flag things on this page. So if you saw a couple different requests that you wanted to go back to at a later date and weren't ready to submit to just quite yet, you can hit the flag button here. And then the next time you go back to the request tab, instead of having to scroll through and see which ones you flagged, kind of defeats the purpose, you can filter here. Select flag, and then you'll see all the ones that you saved. You can also use this filtering for publication, category, things like that. So you don't have to always go through all of the requests all the time.
And does a request or does there have to be a request in order for you to submit to that publication?
No, there does not have to be a specific request out there. As long as they are listed on the submissions page that we went over a few minutes ago where you could filter down, you're welcome to submit. This is just more of like the more specific request for publication.
And not everybody uses these.
Exactly. So then the second tool I wanted to show you was the community tab. So to access that, you're going to want to click on this avatar in the top right-hand corner, scroll down to your community page, and then hit Browse Publications. So here are all of the thumbnails for the editor's profile pages. So we have over 400 publications that use To Write Lights, and they all have a profile page that gives more information about what they're looking for, their contact info, all of that great stuff. So I want to click on one just to show you as an example. So we'll click on Apartment Therapy. So here's all of their important details. So it tells you the editor's name, their email address. So, you know, if you had a submission that went to them and it was overdue or something of that nature, here's where you'll find their contact email to send them a quick note to ask for that update. It will also tell you the different categories that they're accepting. So here it looks like it's weddings, parties, and lifestyle. It gives you a little snapshot of their blog. And then here's really all of the important details. So it tells you their publication frequency, how long it takes for them to respond to a submission, what exactly they're looking for, if they have any different requirements. So for wedding day submissions, they have their own requirements that they look for in submissions. And it also talks about their editorial style, all of the things that you really need to know and want to keep in mind when you're actually writing that album story and tagging your vendors. And then if you go down, you're going to see their portfolio. So this is a little snapshot of the types of images that they're accepting. So you can tell their style, so if they're light and airy or if they're more moody. It'll also show you that they do lifestyle and parties. It's just a great snapshot of their publication, and it's a good way to kind of think, okay, did my images match up with theirs? Is my style maybe light and airy and they're looking for moody? It's just another way to know how well your submission might do with that publication.
Great.
Okay. So that's really the community tab in a nutshell.
We'll pause for questions.
Yep.
One thing all the time is I'm a new submitter. There are so many publications, and wow, this can be a little overwhelming. What can I do to try to find publications that are the right fit for me? Is there some research I can do? How would you suggest I do that?
Sure, definitely. So we always recommend to new submitters to do their work a little bit ahead of time. So one of our photographers, Erin Johnson Photography, she has an entire system, and she'll go through and look at each publication's profile page and make different lists. So she knows that she shoots a lot of weddings that are rustic. Sometimes they're location specific. She'll go through and comb through the editor's profile pages, note which ones are looking for rustic, note which ones maybe are looking for albums from that specific area that she shot at. And she writes them down and categorizes them by favorites. So she'll go through and have her top 5 that she likes to submit to directly, and then she'll wait to hear back from them. And then she may come back a month later, see which ones accepted her album or marked it as not a fit, and then she'll go through maybe her 5 through 10 choices and submit again. So we always recommend that you submit about 5 publications at a time to keep it to keep it still somewhat exclusive, even though if you're submitting to non-exclusives, you can submit to as many as you'd like. It's nice to keep it, you don't want to feel like last pick in gym class. So you want to still keep it somewhat exclusive, but doing it in shifts and waves is a nice way to get a lot of coverage with your publications, but not overwhelming an editor all at one time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one other really good tip that we've heard people use is checking out the Instagram feeds of all these publishers. It's a really good way to get a quick overview of the types of content that they're publishing. If your style matches that, if you take a lot of the same shots or similar shots as the one that they're featuring, you know that publication's for you and it's going to be more of a shoo-in.
Definitely.
One other thing, Tessa mentioned Erin Johnson, and I actually just put the link to one of the blog posts about Erin Johnson photography on the Two Bright Lights blog that goes over some of the tips that she uses when she's going through submissions.
Yeah, we also have other articles on that blog that list what different photographers use for their tactics when submitting and targeting their submissions. We also have a couple articles from different vendors too and wedding planners so that you guys can see how their workflow works with Two Bright Lights as well.
Yes. And we actually have one other question from Callie.
Okay.
How important is it to include a letter to the publisher or editor before you submit to a publication?
Sure, it's really important. So it's really the last chance that you can appeal to that editor, and so you want to take advantage of that. We know that it is a process to go through all the steps of creating and submitting an album, but just putting in that, it's another 5 minutes to type out a quick note to them will make your submission stand out. And sometimes we have editors that have said that if they get submissions that don't feature a note, they kind of go over that quickly rather than a submission that includes a nice note and notes the details that they think will be important for their publication.
Yeah.
So it is worth that little extra effort to get your submission to stand out to an editor.
It goes a long way.
Definitely. Okay.
Awesome. So I don't think we have any other questions at this time. Is there
Awesome.
anything else you wanted to cover?
Yeah, just a little bit of housekeeping items. The My Account tab, so if you click in your avatar and go to your My Account, this is kind of the hub for all of your personal information for your Two Bright Lights account. So if your business name changed, or if your web address changed, or you added a social media handle and expanded and went to Instagram, you can add all that info here in your My Account and keep it up to date. So you just hit the edit button and add accordingly, and then hit save, and you'll be good to go with all of that stuff. You can also manage your subscription and then your permissions. So just a good place to go to if you ever have a question about, if you're a free account and you want to upgrade and give it a shot to start submitting directly, you can upgrade here by hitting that button, keep track of your badges, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So,
and the social media handles that Tessa mentioned are so important because that's what the editors use when they're tagging you in all of their social media features.
Yep.
So obviously bringing your name in front of even more people. So
absolutely.
definitely keep those up to date.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess we'll give it a couple more minutes for questions. Do you want the camera back on?
Yeah.
So we are here all the time to answer questions. As Tessa mentioned, you get one of us. So now you have a face to the name. We're happy to help anytime.
Definitely. Yeah, we're also happy to give tips as well. Sometimes we have photographers or vendors that will email with a really specific wedding, and they're like, okay, I don't know if somebody's looking for a vineyard wedding shot in Colorado. We're always happy to help with suggestions on where to submit to and make your workload a little bit easier. So that's what we're here for. We love to hear from you guys. You can also just email and say, hey.
Absolutely.
Yes. Make our afternoon a little nicer.
Sounds great. But the email is support@twobrightlights.com. Also check out the blog. There's the blog link right there.
Social.
Check us out on social. We post tips and new features all the time.
Yep.
Callie, can you do more of these? Yes, of course.
Absolutely.
Don't you want to see our faces more? Obviously. No, we'd love to. And if there's specific topics that you'd like us to focus on, send us an email and we can certainly put something together. We love hearing from you guys. If there's more we can do, if there's other publishers that you're looking to, that you'd love to have on Two Bright Lights, let us know. We'd love to help try to make that happen for you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, we just want to make your lives easier.
Yeah. Okay.
Great.
Any other questions? I think we're good.
I think that's it for today.
All right.
Thank you so much for joining us. We can't wait to see you again, and we can't wait to hear from you.
Yeah, it was great. Ooh. Oh,
Yes.
we see this. There is a replay. So you will be emailed after this wraps up with a link so that you guys can watch it as many times as you need
Yes,
to.
in case you really want to see us over again.
Clearly.
And you rock too, Callie. We're so excited you joined us. Thanks so much.
All right.
And have a great rest of your day.
Bye, guys.
Bye.